All right. So welcome to episode 14 of the Online Network of Independent Learning Professionals. Today we've got Philip Morgan with us, who is going to be speaking about positioning your business. He's actually wrote a book about the subject, and so we're super excited to have him here. He was actually invited to speak by Ant. So I just wanted to turn it over to Ant for a second and say thank you very much for inviting. I mean, this is just like a group put on by the community, you guys. So feel free to, if you find somebody that you feel like would be the group would benefit from hearing, definitely send them my way. So Ant, why did you want Philip to speak with us?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a Philip Morgan fanboy. I've now read his book, listened to all of his podcasts, and I think I'm on all of his email lists as well. So I'm a bit of a fan. But I just find I've been finding the whole concept of positioning my business. I know for me, it's definitely the next step that I need to take to really push my business forward to the next level. And thanks to Philip's work, it's really kind of inspired me, and I'm just so excited that he was keen to come along and talk to us and tell us a bit more about how it all works and what his sort of theory of the whole side of positioning is. So over to you, Philip.
Thank you, Ant. Thank you for inviting me. Patty, also thanks for making this available. I'm excited to be here. I'll start with the least interesting part of this presentation, which was a little bit of background about myself. So I have a background in technology. I also have a background in technology education. So the interesting part about that, I suppose, is that I have a little bit of an overlap with what you all do for work. So in the 90s, during the first .com boom, I got my start teaching as a Microsoft certified trainer and MCT. So I taught technical training classes, and then later sort of came full circle and got not hired directly by Microsoft, but started working for an agency that produced training content for Microsoft. So I've always been interested in helping people learn about technology, and that sort of morphed over time into an interest in helping people learn about marketing their technology business. So that's what I do now. And that's really what sort of led me to become interested in the whole idea of positioning. So as Ant mentioned, I've written 2 books on the subject that I think I'm going to combine into one more comprehensive book. But the reason I wrote a book is because positioning involves making a number of counterintuitive, scary, and difficult decisions about how to focus your business in a way that makes it better, makes it more profitable, brings you more clients. And I saw myself struggle with this. I saw other people struggling with it, and I thought I can help maybe. So I wrote a book about it. So what I'd like to do is just take you through a 15. If I'm kind of dragging this morning, it'll be 20 minutes, but it's very short, 15 or 20 minute presentation about positioning, which is about the best I've been able to do in terms of distilling this idea down into a very short, sort of condensed presentation. And the reason I want to keep the presentation short is because I think a lot of the good stuff will really come out of some Q&A. Just, whatever questions you have, I'd like to take a crack at answering them. And so I want to leave plenty of time for that. I do have another call starting at the top of the hour, so normally I would just go as long as you want to go, but today I've got some scheduling things that mean that I have to duck out at the top of the hour. So I am going to share my screen.
And just really quick, Philip, yeah, that's exactly right, Carrie. I keep us on time anyway. We never go over,
okay.
Just to keep everyone. But I will say that if you have questions as Philip is talking, feel free to put them in the chat. And then Philip, don't feel like you need to, monitor the chat or anything like that. I'll make sure we get every single question, that we don't miss any. So we can chat at the end. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to turn off my video so that you're just seeing my screen. And are you able to see my desktop?
Yes, I see positioning for professional services in one picture.
That's it. That's
perfect.
Okay. All right, so let's see here. This is probably going to pop up every time, but that doesn't really. I'll shrink down the slide just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so everybody should be able to see that. So, like I said, I've written 2 books on the subject of positioning and spoken quite a bit about it on various podcasts. And when I sat down to try to reduce it down to the simplest idea that I could, I came up with this one picture that you see. So this is, to me, the central idea of the concept of positioning as it applies to someone in the world of professional services. It's different when you're talking about positioning a product that works differently. So here's what's going on. We've got 4 circles here. On the left is the yellow circle that represents all the stuff that your clients need. And there's a subset of that, the orange circle, that is things they will pay top dollar for. These are particularly urgent needs, particularly painful needs, things that directly affect the top line of sales, affect the bottom line of profitability. These are things that really, from the client's perspective, are central and critical to their business. And that's really a smaller subset of the stuff they need. On the right, we've got the green circle, which is things that you can do. These are your skills, your capabilities, your knowledge. Those all come together in the world of professional services. I'm just going to lump them together as stuff you can do. And I have found through working with either through email or one-on-one, I think well over 100 people have been helped in some capacity with their positioning, and closer to 500 through my books. There is almost always some overlap between the things clients will pay top dollar for and the things you can do for them. And wherever that overlap is represented by the little red circle in this picture. That is your ideal market position. And if you can become well known for doing that, a lot of good things tend to happen to your business. One is that you can justify higher rates. The next is that you can become more selective about what clients you work with. And overall, it is a way to stabilize and strengthen a services business, to find that overlap between things clients really need and things that you can do. And the reason that I can't just create a slide that says, here's your ideal market position is because I don't know. I don't know what your clients need. I don't know exactly what you can do. But I know that if you will investigate deeply what your clients really need and differentiate what's truly important to them from what is sort of important or not all that important, but necessary, then you'll find the things that they will pay top dollar for. And with some changes to your marketing, I think you can position yourself as a solution for the problems that they will pay top dollar to solve. When you do that, you've found your ideal market position. Here's what happens when I say that to people. They say, wow, that sounds great. And that also sounds like a recipe for boredom. And I left a corporate job because I didn't get to do all these things that I'm interested in. And in fact, that's why I'm self-employed now, is because I want to be able to do all these things. I promise you, you will still get to do other enjoyable, fun things, even if you narrow your focus to just the red dot. So this is, a sort of graphical representation of where a lot of us are. We have lots of interests. I find that most people the people I think I'm talking to right now have a diverse range of interests. You're very curious. You're very motivated to learn independently. And for that reason, you are potentially doing yourself a great disservice in your marketing by trying to tell your clients that you can do 5 or 10 different things for them. Now, if those things are very tightly related, maybe you're not harming yourself as much as other people. But I see this all the time in the world of small businesses and self-employed freelancers in the services world. They present their clients with a sort of Chinese menu of all these things that we could do for you with no attempt to say what the real focus is. And doing that is, I find, very harmful, and creating the kind of dynamic where clients seek you out and are willing to pay top dollar for your services. So what you have to do is voluntarily choose to not talk about some things you can do, and you have to know that full well you will be able to do those things, just in a different context, and they may not make it into your marketing in terms of how you market your business. So what you want to do once you've identified something that you think is an ideal market position for your business is you want to become well known for doing just that thing. And again, it's scary to do so because it seems like you're saying no to potential work, no to potential opportunities, and sort of forcing yourself into a very monotonous, boring work situation. And again, I have found just the opposite to be true, because focusing often allows you to go deeper into a subject than you would otherwise be able to. Here's the thing. If you don't do what I'm advising, then you may be fine. But I think you're also going to miss out on the ability to become known for that one thing that clients will pay top dollar for. And what I'm describing is what I would call a generalist position, where you're sort of a jack of all trades. Maybe you do some learning content development, and maybe you also do some technical documentation creation, and 3 or 4 different things that are not really all that related. When you're in that situation, you never really become known for doing that one thing that clients really value. It dilutes your marketing message when you don't narrow down, and as a result, you never get a lot of things happening for you, like word of mouth and so forth. I think it's a good time to pause and give you a caveat. There are other ways to build a successful freelance business or be successfully self-employed. Luck takes some people a long way down the road. It got me a year or 2 down the road before my luck ran out. And when it ran out, it was super painful. I had one very large contract that allowed me to start working for myself, and it got canceled, no fault of my own. And just immediately pretty much all the revenue I was counting on for the next 6 months just dried up and went away. But that said, luck can get you a ways down the road. Connections can do the same thing. This is maybe a little more, I think this probably applies to your world. It's a little more in the world of software, where most of my clients are. You can leverage an offshore team, so you can be the person in the high cost of living area, and you can be winning the work and then having the work done by a low-cost offshore team, and that's certainly a fine way to make a living. And then the other thing you can do that doesn't really rely on you narrowing your focus is you can ride a platform that's, as they say, crossing the chasm from early adopter to mainstream. Sorry, this example is not super specific to what you all do, but for the past couple of years, probably the past 3 to 5 years, anybody doing anything in mobile software was getting a lot of business coming to them just because there was more demand than supply. And that inevitably changes as a platform like, mobile or e-learning or whatever it is crosses that chasm and becomes a mainstream platform. Then the supply-demand equation changes quite a bit. So I just want to not come across like a dogmatic guy who says there's only one way to, take your freelance business to the next level. But I do think that positioning is the only one that's really that you have full control over. All these other ways of, kind of temporarily succeeding are not fully under your control. So when you narrow down your focus, I think there's reasons to do that. Your potential clients are busy. They're overwhelmed with all kinds of information, all kinds of marketing messages, and they're ultimately self-interested. And the marketing messages that penetrate through the noise are the ones that are super narrow. Almost every time, those are the ones that penetrate and stick. Is when you say something like, I'll give you like an example, my positioning statement. I help custom software development shops get more leads. That's how I describe myself in almost every context. And that's a fairly narrow thing that I do. I'm not saying things like you see, sorry if this is anybody's tagline, but I make complex things simple. That's a good example of a very kind of mushy, unclear tagline that is maybe the first attempt you would see somebody make at having a position, but it doesn't really say who you serve or what it is you do for them or why they should care. So when you narrow down, you start to kind of cut through a very noisy environment with a message that's clear and focused on a single specific type of client, a single specific type of problem. And when your client comes across that message, who's a good fit for you, they see an exact match for what their needs are. And that gets their attention, especially if they have some kind of problem they're trying to solve. Your clients are risk averse. They want to bet on somebody who has a really good track record. And when you narrow your focus, you start to present yourself as that type of person. So if they go, say, to your portfolio on your website, they see a very consistent picture of somebody who's always been solving this particular kind of problem and not 5 or 10 unrelated problems. When you make that shift or that transition to focusing on the red dot, the stuff clients will pay top dollar for that overlaps with what you do, you may have to grow and change your business to make that happen. This change I'm talking about, where you focus on the red dot and not all those other things you can do, it's first a marketing change. So you first change how you market your business. You change how you talk about what you do. You change your website to reflect this new position. And over time, your business changes because you've been focused on, and maybe in the past you've been focused on 5 or 10 different things. You start to focus primarily on this new problem that you're solving for clients, or this new type of change you're trying to help them create. And that may involve you moving out of your comfort zone. Just know that that's part of it. I mean, if being successful in business was easy, everybody would do it. I think this is one of the things that keeps people from being successful, is that they see their business sort of as an extension of their own personality. And I think you can stop doing that and start seeing your business as a way to solve a painful or urgent client that a painful or urgent problem that your clients have. And when you start to view your business as that, then you kind of view yourself as an investor in your own business. You're investing your skills, your time, and your skills can change. You can acquire new skills if necessary to do a better job of solving this problem that you've identified that your clients have. So you may have to grow in order to really move into a new market position. I find for some people that's an intimidating thought, and for others it's an exciting thought, because that's why they're working for themselves anyway, is because they see it as sort of a path of growth, or at least a lot more fun because they get to learn new things all the time. The growth is easier than you think, because what you start doing is, instead of managing 4 or 5 or 10 different learning curves at once, you focus that energy into a single learning curve, and the progress happens dramatically faster. So you gain expertise in that area that you've chosen to focus on. You gain expertise far faster than you're used to. that means you start to deliver more business value to your clients. And there is no better reason for charging more or being more selective about who you work with than the fact that you deliver a lot of value. At the end of the day, I can think of no better way to justify a premium rate than to say, it's worth it. I can show you these other clients, they've invested just as much, and look at the results they've gotten. I think that only really happens when you start to sort of take an interest in what can make a difference for your clients and align your business with what it is that makes a difference. So again, you deliver more value when you narrow your focus. You start working full-time on your clients' problems, not multitasking between a bunch of different types of problems. So to give you an example, when I was a generalist, this was after I worked building training content for Microsoft Learning, I was doing, 4 or 5 different things. I was writing web copy for some clients. For other clients, I was building e-learning. For other clients, I was building technical documentation. And then for others, I was building things like case studies and white papers. So 4 or 5 different things. Each one of those, they all involve writing. So I was, at the time, I was sort of telling myself, well, they're all sort of the same thing, but really they're not. The challenge of creating a good white paper is very different than the challenge of creating a good e-learning course, which is very different than the challenge of creating, good technical documentation. So when you stop that kind of multitasking, you make, you make much faster progress at getting really, really excellent. You start to learn the risks better, and you can mitigate those risks better than a generalist could. You start to, this is particularly the case if you serve, let's say, 10 or 20 different types of clients in different industries. If you start to focus on a single industry, you learn that client's sort of native language better. You can communicate better with them. You start to understand their business environment, and you can provide better advice. You can build things that are more valuable to them, and ultimately start to be more like a partner than a vendor. You start to sort of share risk and take an interest in the success of your client's business rather than just, oh, I'm just going to build what they tell me to build. This also reduces the cost of acquiring new clients when you have this kind of narrow focus. Word of mouth starts to bring you work rather than you having to go out and find the work. And word of mouth is interesting because it works primarily within the same industry. So if you do some work for, the training manager at, at some company, they are likely to refer you not to other industries, but to other, training managers at other companies in the same industry, because, it does depend to an extent, but depends on the type of conferences they're going to and sort of professional networks that they're within. But primarily word of mouth spreads vertically within the same industry. Again, there are exceptions. Your marketing becomes more effective. I could do a whole 2-hour presentation on just this topic. The problem that I find most freelancers have with their marketing is that they don't know who they're talking to. And so they hedge their bets and they try to talk to a wide range of, potential clients. And that is a guaranteed recipe for marketing that is boring, unclear, and ultimately not persuasive. So when you narrow down your focus, you all of a sudden, I just hear this over and over. People are like, I finally know what to write about on my blog for my website, because they're now writing to essentially one person or one type of client rather than a bunch of different types. And it's that one simple change makes a huge difference. Clients start to perceive you as less risky when they are evaluating hiring you, because they see you as a specialist who's focused on them, not as someone who's, in a bunch of different industries and not really attached to any one of those. And it also makes it possible for you to capture what I call a leadership position, where you're considered the market leader. You're considered the go-to person for, just making up an example here, developing training content for compliance within the financial industry. Like, that would be a pretty nice leadership position to have, to be the acknowledged leader of like, oh, if you want the best stuff, you've got to talk to this person. Leadership position is a very powerful position to be in, because you get all kinds of free stuff and people trust you just almost without vetting you. They just trust you implicitly. And so all these things reduce the cost of acquiring a new client, which ultimately means that when you're in that leadership position, you do need to sort of continue doing marketing, but the marketing is much less based on hustle and much more based on producing things like thought leadership and creating your own intellectual property and other things that are really good marketing, but they feel a lot different than hustling for the next client. So that is why I think you should at least consider narrowing your focus and trying to find the area that your clients value the most so that you can align your services with that area. I think all kinds of good things will happen. It's scary, it's not easy, but I think it's ultimately worth doing it. So I am going to switch my video camera back on and hope that there's at least one or two questions about this.
Yes,
so,
there
Patty,
certainly are.
Okay, I don't know how you want to handle questions, but however you want to do it is fine.
Yep, I'll read them off to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for that presentation. There was a lot of talk and chatter. It definitely, I think, sparked a lot of ideas for people. So definitely such a good conversation to have right now. So I'll just kind of go in order of some of the questions. Robert was asking about the title of the book, which is the Positioning Manual. Where, if somebody wants to read a little bit more about this information and your Positioning Manual, where can they get that book?
So the book is at thepositioningmanual.com. I hesitate there for a minute because I have a bunch of different domain names that redirect to different things. What I suggest as a first step is go to positioningcrashcourse.com, and it's a free email course. That would be a good way to spend a week to sort of absorb some of that free information before you decide if this is something you want to look into further. But to answer your question, thepositioningmanual.com is where you can learn more about that book. And if you want to pick up a copy for yourself, please feel free to.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. This is something we've talked, we have a little Slack group when we've talked so much about, I think we actually have a channel for niching. Yeah. I'm going to kind of start a little bit at the bottom of some of the questions here. Karen had a question about clients being concerned about sharing secrets with competitors. Karen, could you kind of clarify and ask that question?
Certainly. Through the years, I focused on skill set at a given time, but I haven't focused on industry, which always makes me look a little scattered. But one thing that I've been able to do with a client is say to them, I don't share. And there are a lot of samples that I cannot share for security reasons. And I always sign non-disclosure agreements. But by working in diverse industries, it's allowed me to say to them that that this particular material is going to be private because you're the only one I'm working with within this industry.
Right. I think there are, I have a couple thoughts on that. And this is a very serious and very legitimate concern that you have, that it's going to ultimately be harmful to focus, say, on a single industry because you lose the ability to deflect that question so easily. And not that you're deflecting it like, it's a serious question for your clients too. How do I know that you're not going to share proprietary information? And training is one area where that shows up quite a bit, more so than on a public-facing website. So a couple thoughts about that. There are other ways you could try deflecting it, such as, look, I wouldn't still be in business if I was sharing your information with other people. A lot of times I think it is a sort of, there's a legal aspect to it where there's a legitimate, I'm guessing working for companies that have a legal department.
Definitely.
And they're not afraid to use it.
No.
And so that creates something in the culture where they become very concerned about that. And that's, and that may be something you can sort of get around, and it may not be. I don't know ultimately what the answer is, but you could try something like, basically you're kind of putting their trust to the test when you say, look, I've been in this business for quite a while, and I would not still be in business if I had loose lips,
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be like, we have protocols about that we use. I don't know if you have any employees or if you're solo, but that might be an option if you have employees to sort of say, well, we don't have the same team working on different clients' accounts. There is at least one example. Let me see if I can drop this in the chat here, of a company. I want you to look at Simon Kucher. They're considered one of the leaders in pricing consultation or pricing theory. So, larger companies can make a lot of money by simply tweaking their pricing. And I want you to look at their client list, because to me, it reads like a conflict of interest, disaster. But yet they have all these clients that should be in competition with each other, but somehow they're able to manage it. So I know it's possible. I know it needs to be approached delicately. And I know that in some cases it may be a deal breaker. And what you would want to do if that's the case for you, if it's an absolute deal breaker for your clients to hire you knowing, if Pepsi would never hire you knowing that you worked for Coke, just to put it in those terms, then you may need to focus on a problem so that you can operate across multiple industries. So rather than focusing on a single industry, which is the easiest starting point, by the way, for other folks listening, I want to say that focusing on an industry is the easiest way to start narrowing down your services. But if that just won't work for your business for some reason, then something that may work is to focus on a type of problem. So, we create training for some particular problem that training is really good at solving. And then that problem is going to go across multiple industries, and then you can continue using the same strategy you've been using to avoid that conflict of interest question.
Great. Thank you. I've always just really buried my heels in the ground and said I cannot show you samples because I am being very careful of material, and hope that that in some respects has helped out. It hasn't always, but
I think that's awesome, because it sets the right tone that you are going to be trustworthy. Because when you talk about showing samples, I imagine that's during the marketing or sales process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's setting the tone of like, I'm a lockbox. You can't get anything out of me that you're not supposed to. And so you may just be able to use that same approach, but I'm starting to repeat myself. Again, I don't really know what the answer is, but I think there's a couple ways you could try to.
I like your idea about using the solution to a single problem that does cross industries. I think that sounds like a great opportunity. Thank you.
That's a great position. And I say this for the benefit of everybody. So again, focusing on a type of client is sort of positioning 101. That's the first stop that most people make when they're getting out of a generalist situation. And it's so powerful and also easy. The next step up is the one I'm telling you to consider, which is, what's the problem that is most urgent or most expensive? Focusing on that and then seeing if that shows up in multiple industries is also a great way, so that your position is around the type of problem you solve.
Great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And the next Ant had a question, so I'm going to kind of turn it over to Ant.
All right.
Yeah. So I've been in business for approximately 12 months, and I've spent basically the last year working with a few different clients, built up a really beautiful portfolio that I'm really proud of, and it's all looking very smart and slick. Basically, my next step is to pick a niche, and what you're saying is I need to delete all those beautiful examples off my portfolio and start again, because I mean, a lot of the work I do is very design focused. I'm designing what I think is beautiful e-learning courses for a variety of clients. And I mean, I don't even think any of the clients I've worked for in the past year are my ideal niche, because I'm not really passionate about any of them. And they're just kind of just people who've come along, or people I used to work with, or, just randomly I've stumbled into these clients. And I think it's been a lot of the luck aspect that you talked about, and a lot of the connections things you talked about. So, that may well run out in the future. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of see if I could get your thoughts on, that's obviously quite a scary prospect for me to move on to, and just get your thoughts on that, really.
It is. Okay. A couple follow-up questions. So when you how many potential clients are you talking to at any one time? Is it just a few at a time, or is it a lot?
Yeah, my lead generation process is pretty. It's in its infancy, so I'm getting 2s and 3s, maybe a maximum of 5 per month. Okay. The reason I ask is I want to make sure my next thought would not be a burdensome amount of work. So I say a couple of things to people who are in your situation, and that's a lot of people, which is to either mercilessly trim items from the portfolio that do not fit. This would be after you have developed a hypothesis about what niche or what market focus you think would be good. Okay, so this is not now, but this would be at some point in the process to prune your portfolio so that what is left is only things that really reinforce that market focus. Another option, though, would be to basically take the portfolio off your site and have this conversation over a real-time conversation with a potential client. So let's say you're talking to a potential client. You would say, I would like to show you some work. I don't have any up on my website right now, insert flimsy excuse here, but I'd love to talk you through some previous projects. Now, what you would do is take control of the conversation so that they're not looking at this portfolio in isolation without you there to say, okay, now this is from a different industry. And as you know, I'm really focused on your industry. But here's what's interesting about this. I want you to notice how, we use the design to really accentuate the important information, or you would just you would talk them through it. And I think just that one change. So instead of sending them a link to your portfolio, you talk them through it real time in a meeting would be all you need to do, because then you can provide the context that's necessary for them to not focus on, oh, wait, but this is for a bank and we are a, higher education institution or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So those would be two choices. I think, advise the second, because, taking a knife to your portfolio is so painful. I know you work so hard on those projects, and you want to get some, until you can get a better portfolio that is supporting your new focus, maybe that would be a good way to leverage what you have. Okay. Thank you. The other thing that I just, that's a blanket recommendation for anyone who sells services. A lot of us, I'm a super duper introvert. So a lot of us are more introverted, and if you're like me, you kind of resist getting on the phone, but there's nothing better than having certain conversations that you might be used to having via email, just having those over the phone or over Skype or video chat or in person even. It just, the amount of misunderstandings and, we think this guy's not right for us, just go way down when you start having more conversations, I think. So I'm not saying that specifically to you, Ant, because maybe you do that anyway. But yeah, I think that would be a way to deal with that portfolio question. And it's a very common one. It's so painful to delete anything ever. I feel that I get a lot of business because people either come across my name or my work or see my blog posts or that sort of thing. And then I feel that my work is kind of validated when they see the portfolio, because then they think, okay, I like this stuff and it seems to be good quality. And that's when they contact me. So by removing all those portfolio examples, I may not get to the point where I'm having those phone calls. So I guess that's a bit of a leap of faith, really. And I think, it's going to be a case of, as you kind of mentioned, maybe tailoring some of those examples to be aligned with the niche that I'm going after, rather than keeping them so general. I think that's going to be, it's always, like you say, it's all about the positioning those examples rather than keeping them so general.
Yeah, and maybe there's a way in how you present those examples online to focus them away from the industry and make them more like a mini case study where it's, here's the problem we solved, and you're more talking about your process, and having not looked at your portfolio, I don't know if that's what you're already doing, but that might be a change you could also make to sort of get a little closer to where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think this is kind of something we've talked about before, which is a very interesting topic. I think Christy may have mentioned it at one point about she's very much into scenario-based, training, and she's not really someone that wants to tweak your PowerPoint slides. So she wouldn't put tweaked PowerPoint slides up on her portfolio. She's going to put scenario-based training. That's kind of her niche. So because then she doesn't want to get more and more of that, thing. It's like you put up what you want to get more of. So that makes sense.
Really good point. Yeah.
And so we're going to, we have another question from Bruce. So I'm going to turn it over to Bruce.
Hi. Yeah. So currently I have a day job, but I'm working towards building business in the virtual world's augmented reality. It's really an emerging kind of platform for education. So I was just at the Google campus last night. They had this big, they called it kaleidoscope, and a bunch of different vendors with some different artists that were showcasing content, and it was a mess. I mean, it's really a good metaphor for where the industry is at right now, but there's just so much potential with using this medium for education. So I'm heading in that direction.
Cool.
And I just wanted your thoughts about, preparing. I guess it's for anybody that really is thinking about making the move from, full-time career into, what do they have to do to prepare?
Well, that ultimately comes down to your risk tolerance. Are you in the Bay Area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the stakes are higher than if you're living in Oklahoma City in terms of needing to replace income and stuff like that. So one thing I would recommend is to have some kind of system that you have seen reliably bring you new prospective clients that you can have a sales conversation with. So whether that is referrals or some form of online marketing, it just took me so many years to figure that out, and those were very stressful years, very, very stressful years. So that's one thing I would think about is how can you systematically acquire clients? The other thing is to be aware that what you're talking about, or what you're suggesting you might do, is sort of orient your positioning around a platform, which is VR, or whatever the right label for that is. And I think that now is a good time for that platform. So if you sort of became the guy who helps you build educational content that works effectively on this VR platform, that's probably going to have a 5 to 10 year shelf life for a position like that, where it's still very much in early adopter status. And if you're curious about this whole idea, the book to read is called Crossing the Chasm. It talks about how technology moves from early adopter to ultimately to mainstream status. And that's a fairly predictable life cycle that every technology goes through. So when you're talking about a position that is based on a platform, which is sort of what you're hinting at here, you need to think about where it is in that life cycle, because it can be so fun to be on the right part of the life cycle, because you just sort of hang out your shingle, and because there's so few other people who are focused on this weird new technology, which is also very risky because it's so weird, new, and unproven, that when it starts to gain popularity, you just have work coming to you in greater quantity than you can handle. But know that eventually, when it gets closer to mainstream, that all the newcomers are going to come in and start encroaching on your territory. If you have a leadership position by that point, that may not be a problem. But again, this could be a very good position and a good time for that position. So my only real advice is just figure out some way to systematically get clients. Otherwise, maybe you'll get lucky, and then maybe you'll get unlucky and have a very stressful 2 or 3 years. I don't know. I mean, it sort of depends on a lot of things. I couldn't really say for sure, but that's my general advice. What do you think? Is that helpful at all?
No, it's very pragmatic.
Yeah, that's what 3 years of being broke will do to you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So we'll take another question or two. We've got about 10 minutes left. Carrie has a question. I know one of the things that you had mentioned about marketing your niche, that you could do a whole presentation on that. Her question is, how do you get noticed in a sea of businesses online? I mean, do you have like a tip or two that you might share about marketing to your niche?
Yes. Hold on a second here. So this is for Bruce. Bruce, there's an article that is my best attempt at how do you put together a systematic way for acquiring clients. That link in the chat. Okay, so I'm a big fan of, there's two sort of ways I would answer that question. One is, once you have gone through the work of identifying a market position that you want to capture, which involves becoming very specific about who it is you're trying to serve, then automatically you'll start to cut through the noise a little better, because anything you do will have this edge to it, not in a negative, hurtful way, but in a very precise. The people that you're trying to reach will recognize it instantly that you're talking to them. So anything you do will take on that quality, and that will help. The other thing is, I like to think about how quickly I can increase the trust of a potential client. And sometimes increasing their trust quickly is not going to happen. But I like to design any kind of marketing to focus on increasing trust. So you're trying to optimize for increasing trust in your marketing. So things where you can speak real time with people will do that almost better than anything else, because they can just see and feel with just sort of a higher bandwidth, if you will, whether you're trustworthy, whether you really know what you're talking about, whether you're confident, whether you are thoughtful or dogmatic, on the other hand. All those things really come through in a sort of high resolution way when you can do some kind of teaching-based activity where you're talking to people. The next best thing is something like appearing on a podcast as a guest, or doing a webinar that might be recorded and replayed after the fact. That's sort of one step removed from that. So I like to find audiences that are interested in what it is that I can help them with, and do some kind of teaching-based activity, and then send them back to some piece of content that gets them on a list and I can market to over time. So that really is, like this, Anthony says, and this really is a sort of showing you the way that I like to do it. And I just think it builds trust faster than almost anything I've seen. So I tend to write about this a fair bit. So if you follow that link I just posted in, that will be, I think, a nice starting point to kind of paint the picture for you of how this could work. But yeah, those are two things I would say. I mean, like I said, I could go on and on for a very long time about this, but think about how quickly can you increase trust, and think about how you can identify your ideal client. And every marketing thing you do, just pretend like it's just to that one person, and it will take on this clarity and focus that starts to change things for you.
Awesome. That's very helpful advice. And I know, like, marketing is such a big, it's definitely a big piece of this. So we do have three people on our panel today, Ant, Shannon, and Christy. I just wanted to see if any of them had any thoughts about, in the e-learning specific industry, if there's anything that they, think about this topic, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, or things that you may do in your own business that have helped you in this arena, or if you just take whatever work comes.
Yeah, okay, I'll start. I think I agree with it, but I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? Until you try it and you prove to yourself that the concept is is going to work. It's difficult to know until you try it, I guess, and that's the scary step that Philip's been talking about, is actually getting out of my comfort zone and trying it. And I think for me, I think it's figuring out in which direction I plan to try and choose a niche. And Philip's mentioned that the industry is the easiest one to attack first. So I see that maybe being the way that I go to begin with. But then it's really interesting to maybe hear from Christy with her. She's obviously niching down to a scenario based e-learning, which I'm interested in, because I guess from one aspect, I guess the devil's advocate would say that if you're choosing a type of e-learning, could it be said that the client's not going to know what type of e-learning they need before their problem needs to be solved, if you see what I mean? So are the clients going to come to you and say, look, I have this problem, I want to train these staff and get them better at X, Y, and Z. Are they going to know at that point whether scenario learning is what they need to solve that problem, or is there a different way? Will they have that knowledge in the beginning? So maybe I could pass this over to Christy and find out what her experiences are of that. Sorry to put you on the spot, Christy.
No, that actually is an excellent point. And okay, so especially for those who haven't been here before, I have talked about that my niche is in scenario-based learning and in using the combination of storytelling and technology. And that's, if you look at my LinkedIn one sentence summary and everywhere else, that's how I branded. I've been writing more blog posts about scenario-based learning, so I'm doing that sort of thing. One of the things in my notes here, literally, and is, I talk about my solution, but not in terms of their problem. And I think that's the light bulb that went off for me during Philip, while you were talking, was I have been talking about it in terms of scenario-based learning. And to a large extent, the people who find my site, I mean, part of it is, if you Google instructional designer, you are probably going to find my site at least within a couple of clicks. And so I am lucky that I have this post that I wrote in 2007 that still gets me that much traffic, that I get 100 views a day on this blog post I wrote that many years ago. So yeah, there is definitely, people do find it. They see those examples, and to some extent, the clients do sort of self-select. People who are totally uninterested in scenario-based learning look at my portfolio and look at the description of that solution and just go somewhere else. But I think I could, without doing too much tweaking, I could do a better message of that to focus on, do you have a problem with, are you creating e-learning that's boring, that it's click next, that it's not actually, people can't figure out how to transfer it to their actual jobs? I can fix that problem, and here's how I do that. And I don't think it's going to take me that much to switch that while still staying in this niche where anybody in a lot of different industries or higher ed or whatever could potentially use this. But I think I can do a better job of articulating the problem instead of starting with my solution. And I think that that's probably where I have a room to improve right now.
Yeah, if I can jump in and say that you've put your finger on something hugely important, which is to use your client's language for describing the problem, so that when they see your website, they remember the 5 meetings past when this problem has come up, and they say, "Oh, that gets their attention." Then you can start to transition into talking about, well, here's a solution. It's called scenario-based learning, and here's why you should care, and here's proof that it will solve your problem and all that. So the best way to get that language is to simply ask them. It's so simple, and you're probably already thinking in those terms, but make sure it really is their language.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is considered, niching or not, but like for me, I look at, the entire e-learning or training development process, and I say, what am I the best at? I am the best at instructional design. I am not the best at graphic design. So I can build you a course, but it's not going to look as good as if, we had divvied out the pieces. And I know, people like Shannon and Vicki kind of are able to do the entire thing because they have people that they work with, and also Danny. But for me, I'm just working with myself at the moment. So I accept instructional design projects for the most part, because that's what I'm the best at, quickest at. So it's, another thing of just looking at an entire process and saying, this is the piece that I'm going to be incredible at.
Absolutely.
Well, wonderful, you guys. Philip, thank you so much. Everyone, let's thank Philip for all of this incredible information.
Thank you.
Chat love, clap, whatever you want to do. Very, very helpful, and just, thought-provoking, something to think about in a lot of ways. And before we go, we've got literally 1 minute. So Ant, you have 1 minute. Ant wanted to show us something on Slack. And so I'll just pass it over to him, and then we will conclude.
Okay, thanks, Patty. Just can you see my Slack now?
Yes, we can see your Slack.
Cool. Okay, so I know there's a lot more people on the call today who maybe haven't joined the Slack group yet, so I thought it'd be quite cool just to quickly share this with you guys. Some of you have joined recently, maybe haven't got access to all of these channels on the left-hand side, and you can see we've got our niching chat here with all this conversation in. So you can just add channels by clicking on channels on the top top left, and then you just choose the channels you want to join. So click on the channel, click join, and you can then add and remove any that you don't need. So I'm going to stop because it's 5 o'clock, but I just wanted to mention that if you guys need access to Slack, just drop me or Patty an email and we'll send you the invitation. So that's it from me. I'll pass you back to Patty.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ant. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be meeting next week, same time, same place. It is going to be in March. Wow, crazy.
Thanks, everybody.
See you. Bye.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. This has been great.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks.